David Bowman, the jeweler and owner of Desert Chains, and as I described in the last video, I'm walking through the process of turning this image, this model's image, into something which is going to look great on my website. The last video, we extracted her from the background and then put a nice clean background behind her. We're going to tackle something quite a bit harder this time, and that is acne. Going to have to get rid of all of that because I don't want that to show up and be distracting on the image when I post it to my website at desertchains.com. So we're going to do two things. First, I'm going to just brighten up this image just a hair, and then we're going to come in and we're going to get rid of all of this acne that you see on her face. So for starters, let's brighten this up a little. So click on my main image there, which we created in the last video. And I'm going to add an adjustment layer. I'm going to add brightness and contrast. Now, it doesn't need much. I had her under pretty good lights when I shot this image. So really, I'm only going to bring it up just a hair, maybe up to about 5. Let's get up there to 5. Okay, 5. So let's see what that looks like. So let me turn off the brightness and turn it back on. And not much of a difference. It's pretty subtle, but like I said, it only needed a very slight tweak. So that's how we do that. Okay, so now let's get to the real task, which is cleaning up all of this acne over here. So to start that, I am going to down here, and I'm going to create a new adjustment layer over top of this, in which we're going to do all the work. The first thing that we have to do is we have to get rid of all that red, obviously. Once we get rid of the red and kind of normalize it to the skin tone, then it'll be much simpler to go in with the spot healing brush and the healing brush tool to take care of all the little blemishes. All right, so let me start by creating a new layer first. And on that layer, I'm going to select with my lasso tool part that we need to fix. Now, her whole face isn't going to go on the website. Really, I'm going to cut her off somewhere below the nose. So I don't really need to worry about all that up there. All right, so I've lassoed her. And now I'm going to Alt lasso. And as before, Alt will pretty much do the opposite of whatever the default brush setting is. So I'm using my Alt key while lassoing, and that lets me select areas to remove from selection. I tend to do it just a little bit at a time, just in case my hand goes wonky, then it's a little easier to do. All right, so we pretty much have her there. Okay, pretty good. So we've got the part of her face selected. Now, I could work the whole face, but frankly, I'm doing a lot of these images. They take quite a bit of time. So I'm only going to work on the part that I know is going to be included in the final image. So I'm going to click up here my ruler, and I'm simply going to drag down to make a guideline right below her nose. All right. That gives me an idea of how far up her face I need to actually work to get rid of acne. All right, so we've got our selection, we've got our guide tool there. What I'm going to do at this point is create a new layer, which will have that selection in it. And I'm going to go ahead and group it, which is Control G. And I could hit the group button down here, but my hands are already on the keyboard, so Control G. And the only thing in the group, of course, is that single layer. Now, the most important thing probably is I'm going to create a layer mask, because as I make adjustments to the colors, I don't want to affect anything except that area that I have selected. So while my group icon is activated, I'm going to come down here and click on create a layer mask, which is that square one with the open circle. See right there, we've got our layer mask with a little tiny white dot in it, shows the actual area that's been selected. Okay, so from here, I'm going to make an adjustment layer because I want to actually, I want to have within that selection focus on just those red areas of her face. So in order to do that and to change the color of those red areas and get rid of it, I need a hue saturation adjustment layer. Okay. Now we're only going to target the reds, so let me grab reds from the list and watch what happens when I bring this way up here. See, it's only affecting those areas inside of the mask, which is very, I don't want to affect anything else. Then I can use my little slider down here, the little double slider. The top one says, what color are we looking at and what color are we changing it to? So the starting color and the target color, and it's reds being changed to greens. This is, skin has a lot of red in it, but we want to slide this down so that we're only affecting those reds, the acne, about there. Okay, so that's the area that we're going to adjust right there. Now, having made that selection with my slider down here, I can reset these back to 0. And then, which takes us exactly what we started with, but then I can bring my hue slider back up. If I come all the way up, we just get what we had. But I'm going to bring it up just a hair until I start seeing that red area begins to look a little more like skin tone. So I'm bringing up the hue a bit, and I'm bringing up saturation. If I go too far, I get purple or orange in this case. So I'm back down until it's more or less, just by eyeballing it, skin color. Right. That seems to have gotten rid of the reds pretty well. All right. So now that we've done that, let's go ahead and go back to our layers and gotten rid of reds. So now we're just going to use the healing brush tools. One thing you'll notice is when I got rid of all those reds, I took out all the reds from her lips, which looks kind of silly. So I need to change the layer mask. Right now, that whole area is selected and all the changes took place in there. Now I need to get rid of the lips from the selection. I need to deselect the lips. So just like we did in the last video, I'm going to click on the layer mask, and then when I paint with white, it will add to the selection, but if I paint with black, it will remove it from the selection. So I'm going to get my paintbrush. I'm going to get my black ink over here, down a little. So by painting with black, I'm going to remove it from the selected area. Watch how cool this is. There are her lips again. Because I'm taking that area out of the selection, which is being affected by the color change. Okay, I think we've got all the lips in there, and that puts the color back in her lips. All right, now that we've done that, got reds taken out, we put our lips back on, which looks nice. So now let's just start attacking that acne. Let's get a new layer. And I'm going to come up here to my spot healing brush. I'm going to use a combination of spot healing brush tool and the healing brush tool, mostly the spot healing brush tool, at least to start. So I've got my pen set. I want it just a little bigger than what any acne is going to be. I am using a pressure sensitive pen up here, which allows me to get, even though I've got kind of a large target area, I can get in there pretty small inside of it. Excuse me. Okay, so let's just start working ourselves around here. And we're just going to start banging away at all these little blemishes. I'm going to do all the little stuff first, and then I'm going to come back in afterwards, smooth it out with the healing brush tool. Let's get rid of some of this texture up here, all the way up to that guideline that we created. Just getting rid of blemishes. Already it's looking so much better. And you can really see the difference between the above the line versus below the line. I'm not worried about the above the line. That's not going to show up in the final image anyway. So this pretty well takes care of a lot of the kind of the bumpily stuff, sort of all over the face. It's little dark blemishes and so forth. All right. So now let's get in there and smooth it a bit. Let's see, quick check. And you'll notice that because I'm working in the layer mask, I actually can't go beyond that layer because everything is constrained by that layer mask that I started with. If I come up here, same thing. So there's the shape of that original mask. Bad. That would happy. All right. I think we've got all the bumpy stuff. So kind of the big splotchy things. So now I'm going to go to my healing brush tool, and I'm going to show you something that's pretty neat about this. One great thing about the healing brush tool is you get to select where the reference is. We're going to paint here based on what we see at a spot that you select. So if I simply alt click down here lower on her cheek where it's nice and smooth, that's going to give me my reference point. So when I start using my tool somewhere else, it's going to begin referencing that point. So here's where I'm drawing, and reference point will move relative to where I'm drawing, which is pretty cool. But there's another thing that I'm going to do that will really help that smoothing. I don't want all the texture to go away. I just kind of want to smooth it out a bit. And I'll show you how we can do that. So first, Alt click down here, and I'm going to come up against this kind of big splotchy area up here. And reference point, and just start kind of that in a bit. Now, here's something cool. So you see her pores are really noticeable up here, and it kind of starts happening where it sort of comes below the line a bit. So watch what I can do. I don't want to get rid of all the texture because that would look silly, but I don't want that much texture. So let me alt click, let's say over here, and I'm going to just come up here and this in, so that. And then before I do anything else, I'm going to change the opacity of what I just did. I'm going to fade it out a little bit so we can see some of the underlying original texture that was there. Now, do that, you can go up to one of the menus up there and choose fade, but also just do Control Shift F. And you see there's my fade menu to adjust the opacity. I'm going to go down all the way down to 50%. So the last brush stroke I just did is going to be 50% see-through, or it's only 50% of it's going to show up. And that puts back some of that texture. So we can do the same thing over here. Grab a new point, click over there, smooth that out a bit. I don't want to get rid of it like that. So Control Shift F. Then I'm going to take it down to 50%. I need to go up a little. So if I go all the way up, that's the brush stroke, it's not see-through at all. If I go all the way down, it's completely see-through. Let's do it at about, let's call it about 40%-ish. So you see, I still have kind of some of that line that comes off of her cheek there that helps to define the side of her cheek. It's not nearly as severe as it was before. So what else? Let's see. Let me just do another alt click over here, another reference point, and just kind of smooth this out a bit. So you'll notice one side of her face is darker, the other side is lighter. So in order to make sure I'm not putting the dark where the light need to be and the light where the dark needs to be, I think about where that angle is. So on one side it's dark, on the other side it's light. So what I want to do is get a reference point here and paint up here. So they're offset like this. But then as I move my paintbrush around, they're going to stay in that same relative position. That'll help make sure that I don't cut off or disrupt that gradient as it currently exists between the lights and the dark, so the angle of that. So I tend to start below, then work above it. So I bring up my spot healing brush just so we can see. So right through here is kind of where it's shadowing. That. So I want to get a reference point down here, then paint up here so I can maintain that same angle. And that's what I just did. All right, I think that already looks a lot better. Let me get since I've got my spot healing brush, I see a couple more little odds and ends. I think that this is looking pretty good. Let me get one more thing on her far cheek. Got a nice color over here. It's kind of splotchy on the other side, so I'm going to get a reference point here, slightly smaller. Paint some of that in here, but Control Shift F, you take that down to 50%. There we go. That way it's also not such an abrupt change between a painted section and the non-painted section. So I think that looks pretty good. Let me look at it. Let's look at the before and the after. I'm going to just turn the whole group on or off. So before, lots of acne. After, nice smooth skin. I could keep working all the way up, but again, that's not going to end up on the website. So I'm not going to take the time to before and after. That's pretty good. All right, let me get my move. You don't need this guideline anymore. So I'm going to just drag it back up to the ruler to get rid of it. Then let's change to fit on screen. See what that looks like. Oh yeah, very nice and smooth. Before, acne, after. All right, so I'm going to just collapse this group, save, and this part is done. What we're going to do next is we're going to go back in with a spot healing brush and tool. We're going to get rid of the tattoo. We're going to get rid of the little scars and things like that. We're going to look for lint on her shirt. That's the next one. Then I'm going to get rid of that purple halo on the silver jewelry, which often shows up. That actually is probably the easiest thing of all of this. And then finally, what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint her fingernails, but leave that little shiny bit across the top to make her fingernails match her shirt. So those are all coming up. Hope you're finding it useful.